Okay, let's start with these lovely metallic decorative pieces. So we're going to take the main body and we're going to duplicate it by pressing Shift D. Just quickly rename that. And with that copy, turn off the optimal display of the subdiv, and let's turn down the viewport number to 2. And we'll actually stop the main body from being selectable at this point. So let's just turn on the selectable option there and turn that off. So now we've just got the duplicate object. So I'm going to select that and isolate it so I've got a bit less to... Before I do that, select the body and select Shift S and move the 3D cursor to selected. That will put it in the middle. Let's isolate these two objects so we can get a rough idea of where the meter is, so we don't clip into it where it's sitting. Let's add a cylinder. And you want to position this to effectively create the profile of that decorative metallic part. So we're going to use the ball tools here, which comes with Blender. Enable it in the add-ons in the preferences. And the ball tools you can simply use by selecting both objects in a particular order. So try either way, and then pressing Control- on the numpad. So I just made backup copies of that object, the body and the cylinder, because we'll be needing those again for the second part at the back. So let's delete the part we don't need for now. So selecting all of these vertices, and we'll delete those. That's the part we're going to boolean into. So select the cylinder first, then the body part, then press Control-. And that gives us a boolean modifier. And then you can see the effect in the viewport there. And of course, you can move the cylinder, which now looks like a square, a block, around. And obviously the boolean will update in real time. So the important thing you want to do is keep the boolean cut above the midpoint there. You don't want it to go further than lower than the actual line halfway up. Just checking the boolean options here. If we're happy with it, we can apply the boolean modifier. And we can delete the object that we used to make the boolean operation. So let's add a solidify modifier to that. Let's tick on even thickness and high quality normals. Let's also add a subdivision modifier. Let's leave it at 1 for now. We'll turn these off so we can see our base geometry. And if we have a look at the base geometry that we got now, if you have a look at it, you will notice lots of vertices along the edge there. So this is not good. We need to fix this. So let's get rid of all these n-gons that we have. So select one vertex and then the target vertex. Press the M key and select at last as the merge point. So it's a little bit tedious. And also watch out for very close or overlapping vertices. As you can see there, there's 2 that are very close together. So we're just going to make sure we merge those as well. You can also, as it said there, you can use merge by distance as well to tidy that up. So I'll just fast forward this because it is just repeat the same thing over and over. And also, you might as well not do all of it, just do half of it and use a mirror modifier. So let's delete half of it. So let's add the mirror modifier and move it up to the top of the stack and apply it. And with that done, we want to select all of the outer edges because we want to bevel these. I'll just quickly fast forward that to the selection, as you can see there, and make sure you select these lower parts just in the corners there as well. And increase the mean bevel weight to 1 for the selected edges. Okay, next, with that done, we're going to add a bevel modifier. Again, place that above the subdivision modifier. Profile set to 1, segments 2, and the limit method set to a weight, of course. And let's just increase this now so we can see how much bevel we want to apply. Something like that is good. So jumping back to the modifiers, let's turn that on. And it's looking good, apart from the pointy part there. Turn the wireframe off. And with that done, we don't need these faces here at the bottom. So I'm going to select all of these faces that are basically hidden and not going to be visible. And we'll delete those. And once more, I'm going to delete half of it. So in edit mode, tab into edit mode, vertex, select half of the vertices and press the delete key. Add the mirror modifier and then click X and Y and clipping turned on. And the reason we have these odd gaps there is because the modifier is at the bottom. That needs to be moved to the top, just like that. And we still have some weird shading going on down the side there. There's the culprit. These edges are using the beam bevel weight, so they're being beveled. Select these and reduce them down to 0. And with that done, we can still see some faces there, some jaggies. So let's increase the subdivisions to 2. With that done, we can move on to the next part, which is just a quick one. I decided to make the scope a little bit stubbier. I think it looked a bit nicer. So you can select all of those parts, tab into edit mode, and then just modify those very quickly. Right, let's move on to the front part, which looks a bit, I call it an air filter type thing. So in my head, I'm thinking, well, maybe it needs some air to work. So that's what that bit there is. So to start off with, I'm going to add a round cube, if I can find it. It's halfway down. There it is. And from the presets, select quad sphere. You could just use a UV sphere, to be fair. I went with a quad sphere. And let's delete half of it. So I will fast forward this part. The reason being it's a case of selecting these edges, extruding them, duplicating them, extruding them, adding some very small bevels here and there, in like this, as you can see there. And then, of course, the mean crease again, and the mean bevel weight. Or in this instance, I chose to do it manually, the bevel. That's always a good option as well. So select some face loops, duplicate them, shift them up, and use that as a basis for the next part. And add some detail here. So E to extrude, S for scale, Shift Z to lock the Z axis out. And again, some bevels to sharpen those corners up. And then inset at the top, a small bevel. And we can delete that face. I don't think we'll be needing it. And we'll do the same at the bottom there. Delete those faces like that. And duplicate that edge loop, shift it up a little bit, scale it out. That will create another part which goes up against the body of the ray gun. Just use some bevels again, very simple stuff to tighten up some of these profiles. So very small adjustments. And again, some very basic bevels. We can shift it back down again once we're done. And with that done, let's make a bit more space there. And you could add a cylinder here actually, if you wanted to. Let's borrow this edge loop, move it up. Let's just tidy up the bottom part as well. So let's get back to this part. We're going to leave it here, snap it there, and we're going to extrude that. It's a tiny bit smaller than the other part. So like I said, we're going to extrude that up, but this time do it properly. In fact, it's just I calculate. It has normals actually that are not right there. So make sure you check those. This part is going to form the cloth part. Add as many loop cuts as you need to get square faces approximately. Something like that would be absolutely fine. And with that selected, let's also add a subdiv modifier, increase it to 3, turn off optimal display. And you can see there the type of geometry we're going to be working with. So make sure you have that object selected and then head over to the sculpting workspace. Press the / key, ? Key to isolate it. Let's test that works. Just randomly paint on there. Sculpt. That works. So Control Z to undo that. I'm going to switch to a madcap. And I'm going to scroll our way down the toolbar there and select box mask. And just drag a box and clip the top. Just like that. And then the bottom part as well. That will stop this deforming, essentially. Let's again test that theory, see if that actually works. So let's grab the draw brush. And yeah, that works as expected. So that's good. Let's undo that. And this time scroll down again and find the cloth filter. Now, I've never used this before, so I'm going to have a look at some of these filter types in the top left there and see what they do. So I'm just testing to see what happens here. That's inflate. Let's try expand. I think that's what we're going to use. A like and subscribe is really appreciated, guys. It really helps me out. And there's a couple of shortcuts there. F for the brush size and Shift F for the brush strength. So with that done, I'm going to use the cloth filter tool, as you just saw. And now I'm using the grab tool just to refine the shape a little bit further. You could parent them together as it says there, but I'm going to join these into one object. Always a good idea to make up backups. So Shift D to copy it. And I'm going to drag the copy into a collection that I use as a backup. I select both objects, press Ctrl J, and join them into one. And scale that down in edit mode. Let's position that against the ray gun. Slight rotation. We can see I have a gap there, so using local axis, I'm going to shift that up to close that. I decided to make this cloth part a little bit more bulky, so heading over back to sculpting. Now I'm just going to hand paint the mask. So back to the layout workspace. Let's just reposition this button dial. And there we go. Now, the next part is the grip and trigger. So I'm going to fast forward this because it's fairly tedious work, but the results are very much worth it. So basic principles as always, keep it simple. And I'm going to take this edge and extrude it down to create some volume, and the same again for the lower part. So as you can see there on the screen, I'm just using these extrude and scale principles just to keep refining, iterating through the grip. So we start off with the bulk shape, very boxy of course, and from that you start adding more detail as you work your way through it. So here we're just going to go to the switch to the side profile, and by adding some loop cuts, we're going to scale these inwards and get a rough grip shape. It's a very basic geometry so far, nothing too groundbreaking. And let's make some a gap for the trigger to actually go into. Let's isolate these faces here, select them, press E to extrude and push them back into the handle. Flatten that with SY0. Add some supporting edge loops as well, because we'll be adding a subdivision modifier, of course. And with that done, we'll select these edges here again at the front, duplicate them, move them out, and we can extrude those just into the handle. Now we can start getting a very basic profile shape of the trigger. And selecting these edges, pressing the F key to create the faces and close the gaps. And of course, face normals can always be a problem when you're extruding stuff. So as you can see there, just make sure you check and fix those as well. And there's some edges on the corners there that I'm just going to scale out a little bit to round off the flow. And supporting bevel on those parts in a moment. Let's just make some more refinements. So bevel that corner just there. So as you can see, they've got some densely packed edges. So we want to spread those out. You could scale them initially and then press GG with some edges selected, just like that. Press GG twice, press G twice, and slide them along the geometry. So just roughly space them out, something like that. So let's work on the trigger a little bit because it's very basic at the moment. Let's iterate further. So let's select all of these edges and add a bevel, quite a broad bevel. That's looking better. And we've got some pinching there at the bottom. So let's just tighten that up a little bit. So I've created an inset there. I'm selecting some vertices and pressing the J key, which creates a join between them. You may need to subdivide these edges just to get more vertices to play with. So I'll do that there. Then I realize I don't have the same number of vertices at the bottom. It's going to tighten up these parts there. And the trigger is perhaps a little bit too pointy, so Let's move these vertices out a little bit more, give it more of a rounded shape. Let's select the trigger, make it slightly smaller than the hole that we made for it. You can see there we've got some rounding going off. So let's Control R, add some more supporting edge loops to tighten those up like that. A small tweak to the trigger. I'm going to rotate those or scale those from that 3D cursor I placed there. I'm going to isolate that part, select the edge loop, press F to fill it, and then make some joins and cuts. Now we can add some detail to this. So an edge loop, bevel it, E to extrude, S for scale, Shift Z. You can do these very quickly. Let's make that a little bit smaller. There we go. Hopefully nothing too hard here to do for you to replicate. Simple techniques, and we'll position the handle in place. Remember to make edits or scaling edits in edit mode. Otherwise you will have to apply the scale if you do it in object mode. So let's add some more detail to the grip. So again, easy techniques. Let's just add some more bevels to tighten that up. And we can also make the grip less boxy. So we can select these faces at the front and at the rear of the grip. Yes, it is fiddly work, but it doesn't really take long at all. And make sure you're in local view so we don't get distortion. And we just scale them out on the y-axis. I missed a couple of edges there, so we'll select those and we'll scale them out just to round off those corners. And again, distribution of edges. Press G twice to slide them along. And the same on the other side, of course. And then select some edge loops and bevel them. It's probably best if we position this vertically now. So I'm going to use the extrude along normals option, which is accessed by the Alt E key. So at the front, if you remember from part one, we had a gap there. We didn't close it off. Let's quickly do that. So we're going to borrow from an existing shape. Let's have a look at what we can use. So we use this part here. So we'll duplicate that object. In fact, we could just take this edge loop. Yeah, let's take this edge loop. And then we'll move it outwards. With the edge loop selected, press E to extrude, S for scale. Let's bring that in, something like that. Just a little bit larger than the coil that we made in part one. Something like that is good. It's totally made up, of course, so you can make it up as well as you go along. Let's bring that a little bit more forward. Something like that is good. And F to fill, and we'll bevel that as well. So select that edge loop, Control B to bevel. Give it a nice big broad bevel so it's rounded off nicely. There you can see that's looking pretty cool. And right click to shade smooth in object mode, of course. And that's enough. That's all that really needs. All done. So there you go. That concludes part 4. Join me in part 5. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my videos. See you next time. Bye.